What does it mean to hold a family together? To weave their chaos into order, only to stand unseen in the tapestry you've crafted. For years, I, Stella, at 40, bore the weight of that question in my suburban Ohio home. My hands stirring sauces and my mind juggling lists, all for a table of 12 who never noticed the labor behind their plates. That autumn evening, as the scent of roast chicken filled the air, I believed, perhaps naively, that care could be tasted, that effort could be seen. But as I set the platters down, pride flickering like a fragile flame, I could not have foreseen how a single sentence would unravel the role I had played for decades. In the quiet hours before dawn, I began my work. The kitchen, my sanctuary, and my sentence. For 6 hours, I moved with precision, chopping vegetables, kneading dough, and scrubbing counters. My hands steady, despite the ache in my shoulders. The grocery bill had climbed to $150, a small price for the harmony I sought to create. Aunt Carla's gluten-free lasagna required a special blend of flours, meticulously measured to avoid her complaints. My cousin's girlfriend, a vegan by conviction, needed a salad vibrant with colors and textures, free of dairy or honey. My father, ever loyal to tradition, expected roast chicken, though I knew he'd only pick at it. His appetite faded with age. I tailored each dish to their needs, not out of obligation, but because I believed precision was a form of love. The table, draped in a cream linen cloth, was set with care. 12 plates, 12 glasses, 12 napkins folded just so. I arranged the chairs, polished the silverware, and even selected a bottle of Merlot to complement the meal. By dusk, the house gleamed, its surfaces reflecting my quiet pride. I smoothed my apron, my heart steady with the hope that this time, they might see me. As the clock struck 7, the family arrived, their voices a crescendo of chatter and laughter. Aunt Carla, her bracelets jangling, surveyed the spread with a skeptical eye. My cousin's girlfriend nodded at the salad, a rare gesture of approval. My father settled into his chair, murmuring about the chicken's aroma, while my brother and cousin debated football scores. My mother, always the last to enter, swept in with an air of authority, her presence commanding the room. I served the food, plate by plate, ensuring each person received their tailored portion. The lasagna steamed, its layers golden. The salad glistened under the chandelier's light. The chicken, bronzed and fragrant, sat at the table's center. I took my seat, my chest warm with the satisfaction of a task well done, expecting, if not praise, at least contentment. Then my mother spoke. She stood at the head of the table, her fork poised over the lasagna, her nose wrinkling, as if the air had soured. "We should have ordered takeout," she declared, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "At least, that would have been edible." The words landed heavily, each syllable a dismissal of the hours I had poured into the meal. My father chuckled. "Allô?" Reflexive sound, his eyes fixed on his plate. Offering no defense, I waited, my breath shallow, for someone, anyone to speak, to counter her cruelty with a word of support. But the table was silent. Aunt Carla sipped her wine, her lips pursed. My cousin snorted, as if the moment were a jest. My brother glanced at me, then away, his fork scraping his plate. 12 people, fed by my hands, seated in a home I had cleaned, surrounded by order I had crafted, and not one met my gaze. The warmth in my chest turned to ash, the pride I had nurtured extinguished by their indifference. I sat, my hands folded in my lap, the weight of their silence pressing against me. The meal continued, forks clinking, voices resuming their chatter, as if my mother's words had been a passing breeze. But for me, they were a storm, uprooting the foundation of the role I had played for so long. I had been the daughter who organized, the woman who anticipated needs before they were voiced, the invisible scaffolding of this family's traditions, and in that moment, as I watched them eat the food I had made, I understood a truth I had long avoided. My labor was not love to them, but an expectation, a service rendered without cost. The realization was not loud or dramatic. It was a quiet fracture, a shift in the architecture of my heart, preparing me for the choice I would soon make. What does it take to sever a tether you've woven with your own hands? To step away from a role that has defined you for decades? As the echoes of my mother's scorn lingered in the dining room, I stood at a precipice, the weight of my family's indifference pressing me toward a choice I had never dared to consider. The laughter that followed her words, the clinking glasses, the casual dismissal of my labor, these were not mere slights, but a revelation. In that Ohio evening, with the scent of roast chicken still clinging to the air, I chose to act, not in anger, but in a quiet, unshakable resolve to reclaim myself. The dining room buzzed behind me as I crossed the threshold into the hallway. My footsteps muffled by the carpet. My hands trembled. Not with rage, but with the unfamiliar thrill of defiance. I paused, the apron still tied around my waist, its strings a reminder of the servitude I had worn so willingly. With deliberate care, I untied it, the fabric slipping through my fingers like a shed skin. I returned to the table's edge, where my family continued their meal, oblivious to my absence. Standing in the doorway, I spoke, my voice steady and low, cutting through their chatter. Next time, you can all pay for takeout. The words were not a plea or a threat, but a declaration. A line drawn in the sand of my own making. Aunt Carla raised her glass, her smirk a mockery, as if I were performing for their amusement. My brother snorted, his eyes on his wine. My cousin muttered something, lost in the din. They thought I was theatrical, a fleeting storm that would pass. But I was not acting, I was deciding. I turned away, their laughter trailing me like a shadow as I ascended the stairs to the spare bedroom. The door closed with a soft click, sealing me in a sanctuary of silence. My laptop sat on the desk, its screen a blank canvas for the unraveling I was about to begin. I opened it, my fingers moving with a precision born of clarity. First, the Airbnb for Christmas, a $1, $200 reservation for a cabin in the Smoky Mountains, was canceled with a single click. The confirmation email vanished into the void. Next, the ski resort booking for New Year's, a $500 deposit I had fronted, was voided without hesitation. The summer rental, a beach house I had secured for July, dissolved with a final keystroke. Each cancellation was a reclamation, a dismantling of the scaffolding I had built for their convenience. I opened the family calendar, a digital tapestry of my planning Thanksgiving menus, travel itineraries, gift exchange schedules, and deleted every entry. Group chat messages, filled with their requests and my responses, were erased, leaving only silence in their place. The act was not reckless but surgical. Each decision a step toward freedom. I leaned back, the room lit only by the laptop's glow, and felt a stillness settle within me. For years, I had been the keeper of their traditions, the one who ensured flights were booked, menus were balanced, and disputes were smoothed. I had spent $800 managing their PayPal account, tracking deposits for trips they never fully repaid. I had driven 10 miles to secure gluten-free ingredients, stayed up past midnight, drafting seating charts. They had called me indispensable, but only now did I see the cost of that title. As I closed the laptop, the weight of their expectations lifted, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of self. I was not erasing them, I was erasing the version of myself that existed only to serve. Downstairs, the clatter of dishes signaled the meal's end. But I did not return. I sat on the edge of the bed, the apron folded in my lap, its creases a map of my past. The family's laughter had faded, replaced by the hum of their departure car doors, slamming, engines fading into the Ohio night. They had not noticed my absence, nor would they grasp the magnitude of what I had done. But I felt it, a seismic shift beneath the surface of my life. For the first time, I was not planning their next gathering, not anticipating their needs. I was planning for myself. Though I did not yet know what that meant, the spare bedroom, once a storage for my labor, became a threshold. I was Stella, and I was done holding their world together. The question now was what I would build in its place. How does a child learn to carry a family's burdens before she learns to carry herself? In the quiet of that Ohio night, after I dismantled the plans that tethered me to their expectations, I sat in the spare bedroom, the weight of my actions settling like dust. The cancellations were not merely logistical. They were a severance of a role I had played since childhood. A role I had never questioned until now. As the house grew still, memories surfaced, unbidden, revealing the roots of my overfunctioning. They were not born in a single moment but woven through years of small, unremarked sacrifices, each one shaping me into the invisible pillar I had become. I was 10. Standing in our Ohio dining room, the November air thick with the scent of sage and anticipation, Thanksgiving loomed, and my mother's stress was a palpable force. Her voice sharp as she juggled guest lists and recipes. I watched her pace, her hands fluttering, and felt an urge to ease her strain. Without being asked, I set the table, aligning each fork and napkin with a precision that belied my years. I folded cloth napkins into fans, a trick I had seen in a magazine, and placed a sprig of rosemary at each setting. When my mother noticed, her face softened, a rare smile breaking through. "You're a natural, Stella," she said, and I glowed, believing I had earned her ease. That moment, so small, was a seed planted deep. My lay in my ability to anticipate, to serve, to make things right. I did not yet know that love, so freely given, could become a cage. Years later, at 28, I stood in a rented hall, orchestrating my father's retirement party. The event was a labyrinth of details. $1, $500 spent on catering, 80 invitations mailed, and a speech I wrote for my brother to deliver. I drove 15 miles to secure a cake that matched my father's taste, coordinated RSVPs during lunch breaks, and soothed my mother's nerves when the florist delivered late. The family called me the backbone, their praise a fleeting warmth that masked a deeper truth. They expected my labor as a given. When the party ended, my father clapped my brother's shoulder, thanking him for the speech I had crafted. No one mentioned the hours I had poured into the event, the $200 I never recouped for decorations. I smiled, accustomed to the oversight, but a quiet ache began to form. A question I could not yet voice. Why was my effort so easily erased? The wedding of my brother, 2 years later, cemented this pattern. I was the silent engine behind the day, managing a $2. Zero vendor budget, crafting timelines, and mediating disputes between the bride and my mother. I drove 20 miles to pick up table linens, spent $300 on last-minute rentals, and stayed up until dawn, finalizing seating charts. At the reception, the family toasted my efficiency, calling me indispensable. But their words carried a warning: they had no intention of learning to function without me. I was the one who smoothed edges, who absorbed their chaos, who ensured the day shone. Yet, as I watched them dance, I stood on the sidelines, my role complete, my presence unremarked. The weight of their reliance settled deeper, a mantle I wore without protest, believing it was my place. These memories, flickering in the spare bedroom's dim light, were not mere recollections. but a map of how I had been shaped. From that first Thanksgiving table to the wedding's final toast, I had learned to equate love with labor, to measure my value by what I could provide. Each task, each napkin folded, each vendor paid was a bid for belonging, a plea for them to see me. But they never did. Not fully. And as I sat there, the laptop still warm from my cancellations, I understood why my declaration at dinner had been inevitable. The roots of my overfunctioning ran deep. But they were not unbreakable. I had begun to pull them free. Not with force, but with a deliberate choice to stop carrying what was never mine to hold. The house was silent now. The family gone. But the past lingered. A reminder of why I could not return to who I had been. What does it mean to wake from a life you've built for others? To see your reflection in the mirror of their neglect. After that night of cancellations, I carried a new awareness. Fragile but unyielding. As if I had glimpsed a path I had never dared to tread. The memories of my childhood and adult labors had clarified my burden. But it was my 40th birthday, months before the fateful dinner, that first stirred my resolve to withdraw. As the days following my declaration unfolded, my family's confusion revealed their dependence, and I began to step back, not in retreat, but in pursuit of a self I had long neglected. In that Ohio autumn, I was awakening, and the world I had held together was beginning to fray. My 40th birthday had been a quiet wound, inflicted not by malice, but by indifference. My mother sent a group text, asking me to plan my brunch, because I knew the restaurants best. I stared at the message. The words, a stark reminder of my role. I booked a table at a local bistro. Spending, sent on a deposit. Confirmed the head count. And arrived with a forced smile. The meal was pleasant. The mimosas a touch too sweet, which my mother noted with a frown. My father handed me his phone to take photos, capturing the family in candid joy. But no one passed the camera back to include me. I drove 5 miles home, the deposit unrefunded, and sat in my kitchen, the silence louder than their laughter. That day, I began to pull away. Subtly at first, I stopped offering to fetch their dry cleaning, a 7-mile round trip I had made without question. I let their group chats go unanswered, my phone no longer a tether to their needs. These small refusals were my first steps toward a boundary I had never known how to draw. In the days after the dinner, my family's confusion surfaced. A ripple effect of my absence. My brother texted 2 days later. His message tinged with irritation. Hey, it did the Airbnb glitch. It says it's canceled. I read it, my finger hovering over the reply, but I stayed silent. An hour later, he followed up. We sent you the deposit already. I laughed. A sharp, private sound. Because they hadn't sent me anything, the $800 deposit sat in the family PayPal account I had created and managed. A digital relic of my labor. I transferred it back. Every dollar. Without a word. The next day, my mother's email arrived. Its subject line, a reprimand. We need to talk about the holidays. Her words were a tapestry of blame, 5 paragraphs long. Accusing me of unfairness for canceling plans without notice. People rely on you. Stella, she wrote. We expect more maturity. The word, maturity, stung. A weapon to keep me small. As if my silence were a tantrum rather than a choice. I archived the email, its accusations unanswered, and felt a clarity sharpen within me. Their panic grew, a testament to the systems I had built. The Google Drive I had maintained, filled with packing lists and meal plans, was inaccessible. Its contents deleted with the same precision I had once used to create them. The travel rewards account, opened in my name to book flights costing $1, $200 annually, was closed. E-point unredeemed. They had never questioned who managed these details, who drove 10 miles to secure a rental car, who spent $50 on group chat apps to coordinate their chaos. Now, Without me. They stumbled, their messages piling up in a group chat I no longer opened. My brother's texts turned pleading, my mother's voicemails sharper. But I held firm, my silence a shield. I was not ghosting them. I was returning to myself. A process as deliberate as the labor I had once offered so freely. In those early days of withdrawal, I began to notice the spaces I had neglected, my desires, my quiet joys. I took a walk through an Ohio park, the leaves ablaze of crimson, and bought a $15 bouquet of sunflowers for my kitchen. Not for guests, but for the way they caught the morning light. These acts were not grand, but they were mine. A reclamation of the energy I had poured into others. The family's chaos was a distant hum, their reliance a mirror to my past. I had awakened not to anger, but to possibility, to the question of who I might be without their demands. As their emails and texts multiplied, I turned inward, my steps surer, my heart lighter. The awakening was not a single moment, but an unfolding, a realization that I could choose myself without apology. And that choice, so long deferred, was now my own to make. What does it feel like to step into a silence that belongs only to you? To let the clamor of others' needs fade into irrelevance? After my awakening, as I left my family's frantic messages unanswered, I sought not just distance but a reclamation of my rhythm. In that Ohio autumn, I booked a solitary retreat, a deliberate act of self-preservation that contrasted sharply with the chaos I knew my absence would unleash. While they grappled with the void I had left, I discovered a freedom I had never known, a lightness that grew with each choice made for myself alone. The holidays approached, and with them, a stark divide, my peace, their disarray, a mirror to the life I was leaving behind. I drove 100 miles north to a cabin nestled in the Hocking Hills, its wood-paneled walls a sanctuary from the world I had once orchestrated. The rental cost $200, a fraction of the family's canceled Airbnb, and I furnished it with small, deliberate purchases, $20 for a chocolate cake I wouldn't share, $15 for flannel pajamas that warmed me against the December chill. I unpacked a suitcase of books, their pages unmarred by obligation, and lit a fire in the wood stove. Its crackle, a counterpoint to the silence I craved. I deleted the last of the family's shared resources, a $50 app for group planning, a digital relic of my former role, and felt no guilt, only relief. Each act was a brick in a new foundation, built not for their comfort, but for my joy. I cooked a simple meal, a $10 pasta dish with fresh herbs, and savored it alone, the flavors untainted by their expectations. The cabin's solitude was not loneliness, but a homecoming, a space where I could exist without performing. Meanwhile, my family's world unraveled, their dependence exposed by my absence. On Christmas Day, my cousin Danny posted a photo on social media, a snapshot of their makeshift holiday. The dining table, set with slumped paper plates and a single foil tray of stuffing, lacked the elegance I had once crafted. Mismatched spoons lay scattered, no centerpiece or candles to unify the scene. The caption read, "This year's Thanksgiving-style Christmas was a bit improvised. Still grateful." Though, the comments beneath told a different story. "Where's the usual spread?" one asked. "Looks like y'all missed your MVP." Another noted, "A nod to my absence. I saved the image. Not to gloat, but to affirm what I had always suspected my labor had been the invisible thread holding their traditions together. Without me," they floundered, unable to replicate the $150 meals or the 10-mile drives for specialty ingredients I had once undertaken. Their chaos was not my failure but their reckoning. A lesson in what happens when you treat someone's choice as a guarantee. I spent Christmas morning by the cabin's window, watching snow dust the pines, a $5 mug of coffee warming my hands. The silence was a gift, unbroken by their demands, or my compulsion to fill it. I had once believed my value lay in my ability to provide, to anticipate, to repair their fractures. Now, I saw that my worth was not contingent on their needs. The family's disarray, captured in Danny's photo, was a distant echo. No longer my responsibility. I was free. Not because I had escaped them, but because I had chosen myself. As the fire burned low, I traced the grain of the cabin's table. Its solidity a reminder that I could build something new, something that did not require my exhaustion to stand. How do you become someone who no longer measures love by labor? Who finds strength not in holding others up, but in standing alone? In the wake of that solitary Christmas, I returned to Ohio not as the woman who had served, but as one who was learning to receive. The cabin had been a beginning, a seed of peace that I now nurtured through community, reflection, and a quiet vow to live for myself. While my family's attempts to reclaim me persisted, I built a life of deliberate simplicity, anchored by a tradition that was mine alone. In that winter's light, I discovered a new self, one defined not by what I did for others, but by who I chose to be. I joined a women's hiking group in a nearby state park, a $20 monthly commitment that brought me among a dozen women who spoke of books and birds, not obligations. On a crisp January morning, I shared fragments of my story, not as a victim, but as one who had chosen a different path. An older woman, her eyes kind, nodded and said, "You didn't leave. You just came home to yourself." The words struck deep, a truth I pinned to my fridge like a vow. I began therapy, a $100 per ion investment in understanding why I had tied love to labor. My therapist's question, "When did you learn that love must be earned?" unlocked memories of rushing to please, but it also opened a door to acceptance. I learned to welcome support, to let others hold space for me, a skill I had never honed. These connections, forged in trails and quiet rooms, they were not replacements for family, but affirmations of my right to exist beyond their needs. My family's efforts to pull me back continued, their tones shifting from confusion to desperation. My brother sent a long message, admitting they hadn't realized how much I managed until it was gone. "People are fighting," he wrote. "Mom's upset." I muted the thread. His words were too late to sway me. My mother's voicemail was sharper, her voice tight. "You've made your point, Stella. The family needs to come together." I archived it, unmoved. Only Danny's message, sent weeks later, carried weight. "I'm sorry for not helping more. We didn't see how heavy it was." I cried, not for their loss, but for the acknowledgement. However small, I replied, "I'm finding my way," and left it at that, my peace more precious than reconciliation. Christmas, I returned to the cabin, a $200 tradition that became my own. I cooked 50 meals, roasted vegetables, a single slice of cake, and savored them by the fire. Their taste a thank you to myself. The apron, folded in a drawer, remained untouched, a relic of a woman who thought devotion meant sacrifice. I pictured my family's holidays, their paper plates and forgotten ingredients, but felt no malice, only relief. I walked Ohio's trails, bought $10 flowers for my table, and cooked meals that pleased only me. Therapy taught me that healing was not confrontation but closure, written in every quiet choice. Danny, changed by my example, sent a photo of her solo holiday, captioned, "You showed me I don't need to bleed for connection." I typed, "Me neither," and meant it. By February, my life was a quiet symphony of small joys. I sat by the cabin's window, a $5 tea warming my hands, the wind a soft hymn through the trees. I was not alone because I lacked others, but because I had chosen solitude over exhaustion. My family could tell their story, call me distant, dramatic, but mine ended differently. It ended with a woman who no longer sought approval, who found love in her reflection, who rose not in noise, but in peace. That rise, subtle and permanent, was the loudest act of all.